In 1885, Russian forces seized the disputed oasis of the Punjab south of the Oxus River from Afghan forces, which became known as the Punjab Incident. The border was then agreed on by a joint Anglo-Russian-Afghan Boundary Commission of 1885 to 1887, marking Russia's first time and interaction with Afghanistan. The Russian interest in the region continued into the Soviet era, with billions of economic and even military aid sent to Afghanistan between 1955 and 1978. In 1947, Prime Minister of Afghanistan Mohammad Dayoud Khan had rejected the Durand Line, which had been accepted as the international border by successive Afghan governments for over half a century. The British Raj also came to an end, and the British Crown Colony of India was partitioned into the two new nations of India and Pakistan, the latter which inherited the Durand Line as its frontier with Afghanistan. I guess there's Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and all those, but they will play a part, if they can, later on. But India and Pakistan are the focus. Dayoud Khan's redentist foreign policy to reunite all the Pashtun homeland people caused much tension between Pakistan, a nation that allied itself with the United States of America. Dayoud Khan's redentist foreign policy was fueled by his desire to unite his divided country. To unite his divided country, Dayoud Khan started to emulate the policies of Amir Abdul Rahman Khan, and for that he needed a popular cause, a Pashtun homeland, to unite all the Afghan people divided along the tribal, ethnic, modern, and even socio-economical lines, and of course, a well-equipped Afghan army which would be used to surpass and suppress anyone who dare oppose the Afghan government of Dayoud Khan. Dayoud Khan's policy to annex Pashtun areas in Pakistan also angered the non-Pashtun populations of Afghanistan, and similarly, Pashtun populations in Pakistan were not too interested or keen in having their areas annexed by Afghanistan, especially so close to Islamabad. In 1951, the United States Department urged Afghanistan to drop its claims against Pakistan and accept the Durand Line, Afghanistan, Muslim. So in 1954, the United States began selling arms to Pakistan, while refusing an Afghan request to do the same, as they feared that these American-bought weapons would be used against their American ally, Pakistan. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. So as a consequence, Afghanistan, though thoroughly neutral in the Cold War, drew closer to India and more prevalently the Soviet Union, which unlike the United States was willing to sell Afghan weapons, from small arms to BTMs to tanks to even attack helicopters. Wait, no, we're in the 1950s still, sorry, that's DRA, sorry my guess. In 1962, China defeated India in a border war, and as a result, China formed an alliance with Pakistan against their common enemy, India. The Sino-Pakistani alliance pushed Afghanistan even closer to India, and more prevalently, the Soviet Union. So after the Tsar Revolution in 1978, not to be confused with the Tsar Revolution which brought in the provisional government before the October Revolution, the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, or the DRA, was formed on the 27th of April, 1978. The government was one with a pro-poor, pro-farmer socialist agenda, and it obviously had close relations and ties with the Soviet Union. On the 5th of December 1978, 20 days or 22 days, Eastern Orthodox style, for Christmas, a treaty of friendship was signed between the Soviet Union and the DRA, or we'll call it Afghanistan still, right? So in February 1979, the United States ambassador to Afghanistan, Adolf Dubs, was kidnapped by the Samtali Malale militia and was then later killed, during an assault carried out by the Afghan police assisted by the Soviet advisors. Dubs' death kind of led to a major deterioration in Soviet-Afghan-United States relations. So seriously guys, in Southwest Asia, or what we will call the Middle East, drastic changes were taking place concurrent with the upheavals in Afghanistan. For a start, besides the Afghanistan Revolution in February 1979, the Iranian Revolution ousted the American-backed Shah of Iran, losing the United States one of its most powerful allies and arguably puppets in the region. The United States then deployed 20 ships to the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea, including 2 aircraft carriers, and there were constant threats of war between the United States and I will say Persia, just in case 2020 come back to bite me in the ass. If you know, you know. In March 1979, it marked the US-backed peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. Historic moment as well. The Soviet leadership saw this agreement as giving a major advantage to the United States, as the Soviets only had two elsewhere allies, two communist states, and basically everyone bought guns from them and walked the other way, while the West kind of controlled 90% of the Middle East. A Soviet newspaper stated that Egypt and Israel were now the grande dames of the Pentagon, or the foot soldiers of the Americans. The Soviets viewed the treaty not only as a peace agreement between their elsewhere ally Egypt and the United States supported Israeli, but also as a military pact for further aggression into the Middle East, as South Yemen and now the DRA were a thing. In addition, the United States sold more than 5,000 missiles to Saudi Arabia. Now, that's not going to go poorly at all. Also, the Soviet Union's previously strong relations with Iraq had recently soured. In June 1978, Iraq began to enter into more friendly relations with the Western world, buying French and Italian-made weapons, though the vast majority still came from the Soviet Union, its Warsaw Pact allies, and of course, China. Respect to China for once. Come on, respect China. They're gonna play a major part in this series. You gotta pay some respect. So the Shah Revolution. King Mohammed Zahir Shah had ascended to the throne and reigned from 1933 to 1973. 40 years, right? Zahir's cousin, Mohammed Dayoud Khan, served as prime minister from 1954 to 1963. The Marxist People's Democratic of Afghanistan. The Marxist People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, or the PDPA, and their strength grew considerably during the years of 1950 to 1967. In 1967, the PDPA split into two rival factions, the Khaliks, or the Masses faction, headed by Nur Muhammad Taraki and Habibullah Amin, while the Parcham faction was led by Barak Komal, Nejimbullah, and the first Marxist Afghanistani, I can't remember. The leaders of the Khalik factions tended to be Pashtuns from poor backgrounds, while the leaders of the Parcham faction were usually Farsi-speaking elites, like the Tajiks or the Hazara ethnic groups, who came from the well-off background. Symbolic of the different backgrounds the two factions were facing, there was the fact that Tariq's father was a poor Pashtun herdsman, while Kamal's father was a Tajik general in the Afghan Royal Army. More importantly though, the radical Khalik faction believed in rapidly transforming Afghanistan by violence if necessary, from a feudal nation into a communist utopia nation, while the moderate Parcham faction favored a more gradual and even gentler approach, arguing that Afghanistan was simply not ready for communism, man, and won't be for some time, man. The Parcham faction favored in building up the PDPA as a massive party in support of Dayoud Khan's government, while the Khalik faction were organized in the Leninist style as a small, tightly knit organized clique, or elite group, allowing for the latter to enjoy ascendancy over the former, especially with the Soviets. The former Prime Minister Dayoud Khan seized power in a military coup on the 17th of July, 1973, after allegations of corruption and poor economic conditions against the king's government. And while this was true, the stagnating oil crisis of the 1970s was something to blame. But anyway, Dayoud put an end to the monarchy, and his time in power was marked by the unpopularity, as the abolishment of the monarchy was not widely approved by the conservative society. So the first nail-biting issue for the Mujahideen. Dayoud Khan billed himself as a reformer, but any of his reforms were either implemented or even passed, and his rule grew more repressive as the 1970s went on. Dayoud Khan also billed himself as a reformer, but few of his reforms that ever or will ever be implemented, and his rule grew more repressive as the 1970s went on. In 1975, both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia began to support Islamic fundamentalist groups committed to overthrowing the Dayoud Khan regime, jihad, and establishing an Islamic theocracy in its place. Intense opposition from the factions of the PDPA was sparked by the repression imposed on them by Dayoud's regime, and the death of the leading PDPA leader, Mara Abbarakabir, The mysterious circumstances of Kabir's death sparked massive anti-Daewoo demonstrations in Kabul, which resulted in the arrest of several prominent PDPA leaders. On the 27th of April 1978, the Afghan army, which had been sympathetic to the PDPA's cause, overthrew and executed Daewoo Khan along with the members of his family. A bit much. The Finnish scholar Ramon Varjärjänen, wrote about the so-called start of revolution. There is a multitude of speculation on the real nature of the coup. The reality appears to be that it was inspired first by domestic economic and political concerns that the Soviet Union did not play any role in the start of revolution. Nur Muhammad Taraki, General Secretary, became the Secretary General of the PDPA and became the President of the Revolutionary Council and Prime Minister of the newly established Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. So, the factional war within the PDPA, which led to all this shit happening. After the revolution, Taraki assumed the presidency, the prime ministership, and the general secretaryship of the PDPA. The government was divided along the factional lines, with President Taraki and Deputy Prime Minister Hafizullah Amin of the Khalid faction pitted against the Parcham leaders of Barack Kemal and Mohammad Najibullah. The new regime promptly allied itself with the Soviet Union. Many Soviet diplomats believed that the Khalid's plans to transform Afghanistan would actually provoke a rebellion within the deeply conservative and Muslim nation, like they did in Central Asia. They should know. Immediately after coming to power, the Khalifs began to persecute the Parchamis, not the least because of the fact because the Soviet Union favored the Parchamis' go-slow faction, not the least because during their first 18 months of rule, the PDPA applied a Soviet-style program of modernizing and reforms, many of which were viewed by the conservative societies as opposing Islam. The decrees setting forth marriage customs and land reforms were not received well by a population deeply immersed in tradition and Islam, particularly by the powerful landowners who were harmed economically by the abolishment of usury, although usury is always prohibited in Islam. And usury, for those who don't know or can't spell usury, it's a funny word, U-S-U-R-C, U-S-U-R-Y, it's basically loan sharking to the point where you can't pay back and now you're a debt slave to the landowner, working their land for free. Pretty much. And the cancellation of farmers' debts. The new government also enchanted women's rights, sought to eradicate illiteracy, and even promoted Afghanistan's ethnic minorities. Although these programs appear to have been effective only in the urban areas like Kabul, Herat, Pashtuni, and Jalalabad. By mid-1978, a rebellion had started with the rebels attacking the local garrison at Nuristan in the Nuristan region, the eastern Afghanistan province, and soon a civil war spread throughout the country. In September 1979, Deputy Prime Minister Hafizullah Amin seized power, arrested, and killed President Taraki. Over the next few months of instability, it overwhelmed Amin's regime, as well as he moved against the opponents of the PDPA and growing rebellion within Afghanistan. Now that is it, but one more thing we must touch on before we really start to piece this picture together. What were Soviet-Afghan relations like? The Soviet Union had been a major power broker and influential mentor in Afghan politics, its involvement ranging from civil military infrastructure to Afghan society. In 1947, Afghanistan had been under the influence of the Soviet governments and received large amounts of aid, economic assistance, military equipment and training, military hardware, and even some specialists from the Soviet Union. Economic assistance and aid had been provided to Afghanistan as early as 1919, shortly after the Russian Revolution, and when the regime was facing the Russian Civil War. Provisions were given in the form of small arms, ammunition, a few aircraft, Fokker D-1s, and according to a debated Soviet source, 1 million golden rubles to support the resistance during the Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919. In 1942, the USSR once again moved to strengthen the Afghan armed forces by providing small arms and aircraft and establishing training centers in the USSR, or the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic. I got you there, didn't I? It was in Tashkent, obviously. Soviet-Afghan military cooperation began on a regular basis. Soviet-Afghan military cooperation began on a regular basis in 1956, and further agreements were made in the 1970s, which saw the USSR send advisors and even technical specialists to Afghanistan. And you know, in the 1970s, you know what happened? You know, you saw. In 1978, after witnessing India's nuclear test, or the Smiling Buddha, President Dayu Khan initiated a military buildup to counter Pakistan's armed forces and the Iranian Revolution on the border. And of course, the military influence in Afghan politics. The final peace war treaty was signed in December 1978, which allowed the PDPA to call upon the Soviet Union for military support if necessary. Following the Herat uprising, President Taraki contacted Alexander Kosygin, chairman of the USSR Council of Ministers, and asked for practical and technical assistance with men and armaments players. President Taraki assigned. So following the Herat uprising, President Taraki contacted Alexander Kosygin, chairman of the USSR Council of Ministers, and asked for practical and technical assistance with men and armaments players. Kosygin was unfavorable to the proposal on the basis of a negative political repercussions such an action might have and would have on his country, and he rejected all further attempts by Taraki to solicit Soviet military aid to Afghanistan. So following Kosygin's rejection, like a spoil about moving from his mother to his father, or from his Uncle Terry to his Auntie Hilda, Taraki requested aid from Leonid Brezhnev himself, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the Soviet head of state, who warned Taraki that full intervention, Soviet style, would only play into the hands of our enemies, both yours and ours. Brezhnev also advised Taraki to ease up on the drastic social reforms and to seek broader support within his regime. So in 1979, Taraki attended a conference of the Non-Aligned Movement in Havana, Cuba. On his way back, he stopped in Moscow on the 20th of March to meet with Leonid Brezhnev, Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko, and other Soviet officials that were present in that room. It was also rumored that Barack Obama was present at the meeting in the attempt to reconcile Taraki's Khalid faction and the Parchan faction against Amin and his followers, who were now going crazy in Afghanistan. So at the meeting, Taraki was successful in negotiating some Soviet support, including the redeployment of 2 Soviet armored divisions at the Soviet-Afghan border, and the sending of 500 military and civilian advisors and specialists, and the immediate delivery of Soviet arms and equipment sold at 25% below the original price. It is 25% off day. However, the Soviets were not pleased about the developments in Afghanistan, and Brezhnev impressed upon Taraki the need for party unity. Despite reaching this agreement with Taraki, the Soviets continued to be reluctant to intervene further in Afghanistan, and repeatedly refused Soviet military intervention within Afghanistan borders during Taraki's rule, as well as late as Amin's short rule, until they ousted Amin from Barack. And that is it. The story of the Soviet Union and their start and conquest in the Middle East. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I was slow enough. I believe I was slow enough. I might sound a bit hyper in some parts, and I don't really want to sound that hyper, but it is what it is. Enjoy it, because this is the style. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this energetic, yet playful, yet serious, yet slow version of me. Hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys liked, hope you guys enjoyed. And an hour of footage, not bad. I did do over a lot of parts, and I could skip like 20 minutes of stuff and still be, I don't really need to listen through the whole thing, but I'll be very pleased at what I get. But anyway guys, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something. And next week we're going to touch on, this week is going to be filler. So what I think for the future is 4 videos a week. I record on Monday, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, and maybe Saturday if it is necessary. And late week is Soviet, early week is World War I, because we gotta start at least trying to get both of them back on track. Wednesday could be either an off day. Not really sure about footage yet, because Tannenberg, as I hate to say, is kind of dead. So I'll have to gather up all my Bulgarian and Romanian footage and try my best. And there is a new map coming, so there might be some life, so I might have to run and get that. But other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the Soviet-Afghan War, done in real time and in a very proper and professional voice. Tongue-in-cheek, yet still professional. This has been a episode of Productions. Enjoy, learn something, dude. Oh shit, you see that on the voice meter, dude? I'm so sorry, guys. This has been a production of Productions. Hope you guys enjoy. I must forewarn you though, not a spoiler. I'm gonna spoil it a little bit, but there's going to be, it's gonna get darker and darker as the series goes on. So if you're not about all that dark stuff, well, that's war for you. So sucks to suck. Anyway, guys, learn something. You know the schedule. Hopefully, I stick to my own schedule, and I'll see you next time. Learn something, guys. You are now released, comrade. Welcome to the Soviet Army. Who do you think you are? You are here to destroy the Afghan people. If you do not wish to destroy the Afghan people, I highly recommend you go back to your Baltic state, your Central Asian state, your Siberian winter wonderland. Because right here, right now, you're going to die if you do not listen to me, okay? I am Commander Tukachevska. Not Tukachevsky, Tukachevska. Wait, I actually got an idea. This is actually part of the idea, but hold on. Солдата Советского Советия, вия собрая сальпривия, зуская добряска мискра дая афганского народу. Это будет и Вьетнам. Такро пагро по пригуруя, поскоряска, отря парскуния. Бори, die. Alright, that was kind of cringy, but let me hear it one more time. Солдата Советского, солдата Советский, солдата Советского Совета, де Советская Первейшая Дочетия, Добещанию, Миссию, дая Афганистагио, о номерядия. Это будет и Вьетнам, и технио прегалакера по пигарю. Пригавитовския, ота, Полёския, Бори, die. Yeah, I don't want to shout because everybody's in the living room. I don't want to be too crazy yet. But when I need to be emotionally crazy, then I will. Learn something.